Thanks for tuning in. Today on the podcast, we talk about meeting our emotional needs. My takeaway today was pretty profound. As a guy, when I'm asked what's going on or what's wrong, and I reply nothing, I don't actually mean that nothing is wrong. I mean that nothing in the grand scheme of life, in my perspective, is wrong or the matter. And that's why I reply nothing.
And my biggest takeaway was being aware of what is affecting your emotions in your daily life. There's so many things that happen or affect our emotions, and we need to be able to, number one, identify them and then communicate them to our wife so she understands how we're feeling in any given moment.
All right, continue to listen for the full conversation.
An emotional need is a state or condition that must be fulfilled in order for us to experience happiness and peace. Do you agree or disagree as we bring up this topic of meeting our emotional needs?
I think I agree for the most part. I always get stuck on like happiness and peace because to me they're kind of different things, but for the sense of this conversation, I can roll with it.
Yeah, I would say that yes, they are different things. Um, can both be had by meeting an emotional need. Maybe that needs to be part of the discussion.
Uh,
But yes, I agree that they are definitely different things. Um, I don't know if we necessarily have to get into the definition
yeah,
of happiness and peace. Just take them at face
yeah,
value for now.
yeah.
We have more
Actually, it
things
can
to
be
talk about.
it can be an and or an or.
Yeah,
Sometimes you're at peace, but you're not necessarily happy. But you know, we can roll with
yeah.
that. That's what Google tells us emotional needs are. So we're gonna roll with that for the purpose of this conversation. Um, but I think a main point or one of the biggest points is for us as husbands, right? This is what we talk about. Like, how do we meet our emotional needs? I think the first step, I think for me, and I think we both agree, is that you have to acknowledge that we have different emotions and that we have emotions in general and be okay to talk about them. Um, but the first step is admitting we have emotions and we are
Yeah.
emotional beings. Um, so let's just get that out the way. We have emotions. We might know how to process them. We might not know how to communicate them. We might not know what they are. We may only think we have one emotion or maybe two, but there's a whole hierarchy of emotions. So the second thing, if we're moving toward meeting our emotional needs, is we have to learn how to communicate um, those emotions verbally, right? Not just with our actions, because communication happens all the time, but we can't just let our actions dictate our display of emotions and leave it at that. Um, because our actions are going to generate conversations, whether we like it or not. So we need to be able to also verbalize what what our emotions are. Agree or disagree?
I agree.
Nice. Um, and what made me think of that is a lot of times for guys, right? We might know we're angry and be angry. And that is one that we can understand, right? We're angry. How
I
we
feel like you're
display
calling me out.
now that you say that, no. But we can display our anger in many different ways, right? But how we if everything makes us angry, our wife cannot help us process anger, right? Because she doesn't really know what emotion it is. If we're angry because um, someone didn't shut the door, but then we're also angry because we lost some money, and then we're also angry because someone said something, talked out of their neck about us. They also may have said something to our wife wrong. Like If everything is anger, there's no way for our wife to help us through. And a lot of times we know how to say anger is what it is, but it may be disappointment, right? It may be sadness, it may be grief, right? If we're able to verbalize, hey, I'm sad, our wife has a different way to help us with sadness. Or if we say, actually, this is disappointment, then our wife will come at us with a different way to kind of help us. Or if we're grieving something, that's another different way that our wife can serve us. So, right, if we're just angry, there's like, okay, now she's basically shooting a dart on how to start with trying to help us. But if we say, man, I'm really sad, then she can process what makes us sad. Now, if this goes in the sadness bucket, how can I help him when he's sad? Um, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I struggled with for a long time, and still to this day. But what I am learning and have learned is the more we communicate with our wives and the more we have this open dialogue of, our day-to-day interactions, and the things that are going on in our lives, right? Maybe it's not something that has happened in the home or in that immediate area. Maybe it's something that happened at work. The better informed she will be to be able to react in the right way, even if all we are showing is anger, right? If she has knowledge of what the root cause of what made you angry is, then she could even help you to explain it to yourself, which I've needed in the past. Like, no, you're just mourning the loss of something, or you're I don't even know. I'm looking for an example. Maybe you were jealous of someone who got a promotion over you or whatever, whatever the case may be. But the more information she has to go on, the better equipped your wife will be to reel you back in, as I've needed her to do so many times in the past.
Right. That's amazing. Your wife is the real MVP. That's all I'll say about that.
Always. So I also wrote down, whose responsibility is it to meet our emotional needs? And you have some thoughts on that, or a thought on that.
I really have one thought. And hit me up if you don't like it. But my thought is it's our responsibility for everything in our marriage as husbands, as individuals. We cannot lean on someone else to meet our needs. They can aid us, they can support us, they can push us, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to be healthy individuals by ourselves, healthy individuals individually, and to be the best, to show up the best with our marriage. Not to say that you don't need coaching, support, help, guidance, any of those things, but deep down, we can't have excuses, we can't have outs because we want to point at someone else. We have to focus on ourselves to be the healthiest version that we can be. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
I like it, and it flirts with that idea of happiness, right? Mm-hmm. When we're younger, or I don't know if we're taught this or just expected, I don't know where it came from, but we think that someone else in the relationship with us is supposed to make us happy, right? And I think you agree with me that you have to find your own happiness. Right? It takes some work to be able to identify how that all fits together.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't expect someone else to make you happy. And like Paul said, you can't expect someone else to create your emotional stability. You can give them clues and information on how they fit into the picture to, I want to say, help maintain that. And as a marital partner, to some extent, it is their responsibility to, I want to say, might be crossing the line here. I want to say it's their responsibility to make sure that whatever their capability is of meeting an emotional need is taken care of, right? So maybe this conflicts with what you said a little bit, and we'll discuss that. But I think without us as men being able to first identify and communicate what those needs are, then this is basically all for naught.
So what I hear you saying, let me say so I can start there and maybe so what I think you're saying is our partner has a responsibility to create a safe space for us to communicate and have conversations about our emotions.
Yeah.
And their responsibility is to foster that space.
Yeah.
Is there another caveat to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I'll reverse it, right? And I'll put us both in a scenario. It could be said that an emotional need for our wives is to feel safe. Would you say it's your responsibility to fulfill that for her?
That's a good one to say. It's our I see what you're saying with do
And this
everything
is where
that
the
you can.
caveat
Right.
is like, right, the
Do
things that
everything
we're
like
capable of.
yes. So I should be able to, I can't make her feel safe, but I can foster a safe environment.
Right.
Right. Because sometimes if someone like, if my wife had had trauma where it's very hard for her to feel safe, I can foster a safe environment to the cows come home. And maybe everyone else that comes in and sees our relationship, sees our home, all that, they're like, man, this is like an awesome safe space. But if she has trauma that she hasn't dealt with, there's nothing I can do to make her feel safe. But I can try my hardest to foster a safe environment. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is
And
that
then
is
we
that
even get
more
into the,
is that more on the line of what you're saying? Like
yeah,
you got to
absolutely.
do everything that you can, but it's not your responsibility per se. But you do have a responsibility to make an effort to give them I don't know how else to say it. Give them what they need, but it's not that. I don't know.
Ah,
I can't.
love it. I love this
Uh,
conversation.
yeah.
So where my mind's going is, let's get even a little bit further past, let's say our wife has had trauma, but now she is starting to deal with it or has dealt with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she has communicated to us now, these are the things that I need in place in order for me to feel safe, right? Now, obviously, she has a responsibility to make sure those things are in place. But it's also our responsibility to help make sure those things are in place, whether it be systems and processes, whether it be, just I can't say mindset, but I think you probably pick up what I'm getting at, right? If she communicates to me, hey, it would make me feel safe if we had X amount of money in our bank account for emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Obviously, that's something we're going to accomplish together, but I have to play my role in that
Right.
to get to that goal.
No, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I'm thinking, so where I think where I'm saying it's our responsibility is like she took on the responsibility of figuring out what that need is, right?
Yeah.
Like she figured out these are the steps. So like that was her responsibility as a partner. Now, you come in and are like, okay, great. You've identified this is what it is. I'm going to help in whatever way I can. So I wouldn't say you're not meeting her need because she's figuring out what that need is. Like,
Mhm.
I don't, it's a weird conversation space, but I think we're saying the same thing, if
I
that
think
makes
so.
sense.
I
Because
think maybe where we're stuck is the transition from identifying the need to fulfilling the need,
right,
right? I I can't identify for her what she needs to feel safe.
right,
She can identify it, she can communicate it, and then within my capability, I'm going to provide everything I can to fulfill what her need is,
right.
right? She also has some responsibility in that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that started with, again, like we said, identifying it and communicating it to me. And then she's also going to have a responsibility in fulfilling it for herself, right? Because I can't, depending on what the scenario is, I can't always be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order for her to feel safe. Um, but if she came to me and said, hey, I need X, Y, and Z, maybe I can provide X and Z, and then it's going to be on her to provide Y.
Mm-hmm. Right. But she can't hold you hostage to, she can only hold you hostage to what you agree to, right? She can't
That's fair.
say, um, I need XYZ and you're going to provide XYZ and I'm looking for you for XYZ and that's it, right? She can't identify and then put it all on you to be the fulfiller. Like she's
Right.
got to, I think that's ultimately where I land is like, once we know what our needs are, we can't just look to someone to fulfill that without having any responsibility for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We
That's,
got
yeah.
that.
We're good there. Um, I think an important part as far as our emotional needs is also um, being able to hear how our emotions affect our wives.
Mhm.
Um, because as we're working through, and even this, I tell everybody like you can do and say whatever you want, but you also have to be ready for the ramifications of those choices, right? So if you're going to fly off on the handle and be aggressive with someone physically and you didn't know they were an MMA fighter and you get knocked out or you get your wrist broken, like that's on you. Like you're welcome to initiate that assertiveness or aggressiveness physically, but you have now reaped the consequences of self-defense, right? So you know what I mean? Um, so you have to be able to hear, and it's a way for us to realize that we need to manage the communication of our emotions, right? So when we're angry, we need to verbalize that we're angry, not punch every wall in the house, not scream at everybody, not kick the dog, because all those things are now like, oh, I am now unsafe. I am now unsafe when he's angry. So now we need a contingency plan on how to get, how to process this, whether it's we're now leaving, whether we're now giving ultimatums, whether we're now, all these unhealthy spaces because we haven't figured out how to express our emotions in a healthy way.
Yeah. And you got me thinking of this instance that legitimately just happened last night when my wife got home from work. And what I want to talk about is being aware or attempting to be aware of the things that might be affecting your emotions, right? So let me just kind of set the scene here. She was walking in the door from work. I'm sitting on the couch. I'm watching a show on Apple TV, right? And this show has been all about, um, someone who was murdered. A good guy was caring for someone, and now they are trying to find out, who did it. And within this, I'm realizing now that it affected my emotions in a way where I may have felt a little bit of anger and a little bit revengey, right? And my wife walks in the door and she's like, "What's wrong?" And like once I took my attention away from that into her, I was like, "Nothing." Why? Right? And like she may have thought that I was mad at her for some reason, but I was just engaged in the show I was watching and feeling what the producers of the show, I'm sure, wanted me to feel. Right? Is why we fall in love with these shows and want to
Right.
watch them and engage with them and can't wait to get to the next week to the next episode. Um, but there's so many things that pour into us throughout our daily lives that can affect our emotions. So you know, practicing being aware of what those things are is major, right? And like that was something so little, and that nuance my wife picked up on immediately when she walked in the door.
That is such a good take. Like that is, oh my gosh, we have to be so aware of what's going on around us, what we're taking in, what we're seeing, what we're allowing our emotions to be attached to. Oh man. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That is really that's a check right there for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, got a couple more minutes here. So I feel like I just kind of want to spitball back and forth about some ideas on how we can practice being aware. You know, off the top of my head, keeping a journal of emotion changes, right? Let's say you're at work and they dump a huge stack of stuff that you got to get done by 3 o'clock and it's 1:30,
Right.
and like it just flips a switch and you're like, I can't, right? Documenting something like that, and not only that it happened, but how you initially dealt with it or how you could plan to deal with that emotion change in the future. Um, then maybe even just if you struggle to deal with that in the moment, talking to a therapist about
Hmm.
being able to better manage that. What are your thoughts?
No, I mean, yeah, if you have problems writing, maybe step away and take a voice note on your phone and just get it out, because that'll take what, 30 seconds of a rant. State what the situation is, even if it's like you're talking to someone, I can't believe these fools dropped this knowing I got this done and it's 3 o'clock. And then once you get that out, like it'll feel better. Sometimes just saying something out loud helps. um but yeah, if you document, like, okay, just got a stack of stuff that needs to be done by 3, it's 1 o'clock, go on your rant, say what it is, go back, then you can reflect on it um, later. So don't let the journaling be something that stops you. If you're like, man, I can't even read my own writing, which is me, guilty as charged. Maybe it is better to do a voice recording or something of um, that
Like that.
nature. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as um, marriage with our wives, like, when be attentive to when they ask us what's wrong. um, that's a good way to evaluate outside circumstances, because in, like, if nothing happened, right, if you're just watching a show, you're like, nothing's wrong, like nothing happened, and then kind of evaluate what that space of nothing is, right, and what preceded that. Maybe go like an hour or two before it, like if you haven't seen your wife, so she wouldn't know, like, what happened in the last couple hours that would make her ask that, and then really be willing to kind of dive deep in yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, that could be her thought process as well. Like, what happened when I was gone that got you
Hmm.
feeling like this right now? Right. And I, reflecting on it, I should have been better in that moment to be able to say, like, oh, I'm watching the show. It's got me in my feelings about, let me tell you what happened. Right.
Hmm.
And then she would have been able to better understand, and not have to go off on her own and think, like, maybe it's something I did, or maybe something happened to kids that he doesn't want to tell me, or maybe the neighbor's doing something stupid, right? All these different scenarios that I'm sure probably ran through her head. It's not fair to her to have to internalize that. I should have been able in that moment to say, "Here's what it was,"
Yeah,
and in my man brain, I'm thinking it suffice just to say nothing,
right.
not saying nothing, but my
Right.
response
That's
being
nothing.
nothing's wrong.
Yeah. And I think even that, just to take that exercise even deeper is instead of just thinking about it to yourself, like, okay, this is what happened in like the last hour and a half. And then just even walk through, okay, I made a sandwich, I got my drink. Oh, I dropped the ice all over the place and had to clean it up. And now this icebreaker is like the second time, or, something like that. Like, what I mean? So the case in point, the scenario, right? We have two animals and they act like they like ice. So my daughter, being 9, she'll get water out of our ice dispenser on the fridge and she'll drop ice for the animals, right? Once the animals are done, they don't clean it up because they're animals. Once the ice is done, it's not cleaned up because my daughter's 9. So guess who walks in the kitchen to a puddle of ice, right? So if I walk in and get my sock wet, I am furious, furious. So if my wife was to walk in and say, "What's wrong?" I could, in essence, say nothing. Like, even if it's like 15 minutes from when I step on, because if I haven't changed my sock or if I've had to change my socks. Okay, scenario. I walk in, ice is now a puddle. I step in it. I walk upstairs to change my socks. In essence, nothing has happened in my mind, but I'm now fuming and my wife picks up on it. Like, what's wrong with you? Even if she says that, or what's going on? Why do you feel like that? And I say nothing, but with an attitude while I'm changing my socks, like that doesn't help. But if I say, oh, nothing, but this is what just happened. I went downstairs and stepped on like a puddle of ice and I have to change my socks for the 7th time today. Like, that gives context and that helps me work through what, yes, I'm mad, but I'm not really mad. I'm frustrated because I had to clean up ice, or that no one cleans up ice in the house. In my mind, that's what I'm thinking. So like, it's more of a frustration than an anger, but it's coming off as anger because, you know, I'm upset. So it's like, you know what I mean?
I'm just thinking, how many times has your wife told you, "I'm not a mind reader," right? And it's one thing to say after as a response, like, "Oh, nothing," and it's another to say what typically my actual thought is. In the grand scheme of things, nothing's really the matter. I'm just upset in a moment, and it's going to pass in the next few minutes. So if I have that few minutes, it'll be over. I'll be fine. I'll get back to doing what I was doing.
That is in essence what nothing means when a man says nothing. It's like nothing in the grand scheme of things that really count.
Yeah.
Like, that is that's what I mean when I say nothing. Like, it it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But what if we take the stance that it does matter? Everything matters in the grand scheme of things. If we change our perspective of that, then we can be more emotionally mature.
And it matters to her because she's concerned about your well-being. I mean,
Yeah,
that's fine. That's question. So consider your wife.
that's it.
Mic drop.
Well, we are right up on time, so we might as well end it there.
Yeah, fair enough.